So Bob, thank you for being on Man 360.
Yeah, man. It was that or mow the lawn.
That's
so,
right.
Man, I appreciate you getting me out of that. That was great.
Right. So I just want to also thank you and thank the church, also Oak Ridge Baptist Church here in Texas, for letting us be on their stage and their sanctuary. So
yeah,
it's been great. So just share a little bit about who you are and what you do.
Okay, who I am. I'm a comedian. Wasn't always a comedian. I actually was a stay-at-home dad for a little while, but then we had kids and had to get out of there and go out and find something that'll get me away from there every once in a while. So my wife and I, we have 5 tax deductions, all boys, ranging from 11 to 22. So yeah, our oldest is 22, so if anybody watching this needs the correct answer to any question, he knows everything.
Yes.
And, yeah. No, the joke is, at one point I was like, not only do you think you know everything, like you always want to be the one talking, like everybody in the room be quiet and hang on every word I say. And as I'm saying that to him, I was like, where do you get that? And then I realized, oh,
it's
maybe years of watching me on stage with like, everybody hush and listen
hilarious.
to me for an hour. But yeah, comedian, born in Texas, and what do you want to know, 5'11" and a half, unless a guy asks me, and then we all say 6 foot.
6 foot,
yeah.
yes.
So
when did you know you first wanted to be a comedian?
So comedy was always a big part of my life. My dad is still the funniest guy. I really hope he doesn't go in the business because it'll put me out. And he's always been really funny. I remember I went to him my second junior year in high school, and I was like, I don't look like you at all. Was I adopted? And he just took a pause, and he was like, yes, but they brought you back. And, so it was like just very, very quick-witted. So I've always enjoyed humor. I always really liked it.
Yeah.
Never thought I could do stand-up comedy. Loved stand-up comedy. My dad would let me watch Carson. I could watch the monologue and then go to bed unless a comedian was on. We always just appreciated comedy. We knew God had created laughter. I actually read in a medical journal one time that laughter is 10 times more powerful than morphine.
Wow.
And I was like, that's just, and I'm sure some people are watching like, we like morphine. And I'm not against morphine, like if I break my leg in half, I don't want my doctor standing over me going, knock, knock, but I realized like comedy is a very powerful tool.
Yeah.
My dad was my school superintendent. He would come and eat lunch with me. And I noticed like everybody wanted to sit at our table and just listen to me and my dad just be funny.
Yeah.
And we wouldn't plan anything, but we just kind of rehash the morning or whatever was going on, and we would just sit there and just tell jokes. And so I knew comedy was a powerful tool, but I never thought I would do stand-up comedy. I was going to be a teacher. I was going to kind of follow my dad's footsteps, be a teacher and then a principal and then a superintendent. So I knew I was going to use comedy in that.
Right.
But the way I got into it, was that your question? I know I've gone way
Yes, no, you're
off.
fine. Yeah.
Okay.
How did you get into it?
I went to Abilene Christian University, Christian school. They're always like, you can't put a price on Christian education, but they build me.
Yes, you can.
They build me fiercely about it. So I better get straight to heaven. Like I better get to jump the line. So I was going there. Was getting my degree in elementary ed. My junior year, they were having high school weekends, so they wanted to have all these fun events and stuff. So they had a stand-up competition. And at first, I didn't even sign up. And in fact, the night before it happened, the lady even called me and was like, why didn't you sign up? Like when we came up with the idea, we thought you, and I had a friend named Mark who was really funny.
Yeah.
They were like, we really thought that you too would sign up, and we'd at least have some people that were funny. Because some of the people that had signed up, they could tell was not going to be good. So she said, I was known for being very cheap, but she said on the phone, we know how frugal you are. Like she was very nice about it.
Right.
And she was like, we thought the cash prize would have enticed you, and I didn't know there was a cash prize. So I was like, hang on. And so I was like, yeah, is it too late to sign up? And no. And ironically, I said, how many comedians do you have for tomorrow night? And they said, well, we have 8, you make 9. We wanted 10, but 9 will be good. And I said, well, what if I wrote for one of my roommates? Because he could do impressions and stuff. And I was like, if I write for him, can he be on it too? And she was like, yeah. And so I showed up that night, my junior year in college, did the stand-up competition. I won, not because I was good. Everybody else was terrible, like just so bad. The guy who went before me had a big sombrero, and his whole act was going, shouldn't have sat on the front row. My sombrero might fall on you. That was like his whole
Like a
act.
rim snap in the background to hit or something.
So I got up and I did jokes about the Abilene Zoo and student loans and, like just like basic stuff.
Right.
I won. My roommate got third place. So at the time, I was actually more intrigued. I was like, oh, well, so while I'm teaching, maybe during the summer, I can write like maybe scripts for TV shows and stuff like that. So anyway, I know you asked a question. I'm giving you a plot, but
yes, please.
So won that stand-up competition. Graduated. Before I became a teacher, I wanted to see what it was like to actually make money because teachers don't. And so I had been working summers for this photographer. So I was going to work for this photographer for 1 full year, hopefully, like get a little nest egg, get debt free, and then I would start teaching. That year while I was doing photography, I was in Dallas. I was driving. This is going to tell how old I am, but I just didn't even think of that. But my pager went off. Yeah.
Yes, your two-way. You're getting ready to get on your two-way.
No, I didn't make that kind of money. No, just,
that was
just
big
a
money.
pager, yeah. And it was area code 615, which I didn't know was Nashville. But I thought it was some, person wanting me to do their photography or whatever.
Right.
So I pulled over at a Cracker Barrel payphone, called this number, and this guy was like, hey, I don't know if you remember me, but we went to school together. I'm now living in Nashville. I'm road managing this guy named Clay Cross, who's a Christian singer.
Yeah, I remember Clay.
Yeah, he had just won New Artist of the Year.
Oh, wow.
And so he was getting ready to go out on tour, and they were having a meeting, and they said it would be fun to have a comedian come out. And so this guy who had gone to school with me saw me at that stand-up competition, remembered me, and then when they said they wanted a comedian, he was like, oh, I wonder if that guy's like what he's doing. Tracked me down. So I'm standing at a Cracker Barrel payphone in Dallas, Texas. And he's like, do you want to go on tour with us?
It is so poetic for you.
It was perfect. It was so perfect. Because I wouldn't have pursued it. I would
Right.
never have pursued it.
Wow.
Like, hopefully, men pray, like, God, put me on the path.
Yeah.
But a big part of that prayer is, but keep me off the path that I don't need to be on.
That's good.
And so that was kind of always my prayer throughout my life was just put me on the path. I would have never pursued it if God hadn't just opened the door.
Yeah.
But he was like, and I remember being just so nonchalant about it. I was like, how long's the tour? And he's like, well, it's 6 weeks, but it might turn into 8. Do you want to go? And I was like, yeah, that sounds fun. So I hung up the phone. I booked a one-way ticket to Nashville, flew to Nashville, got off a plane, got on a tour bus, and went out as a comedian.
Wow, that was the start.
That's how I got started,
Wow.
which is great, but I do all Christian comedy, so families come. So kids are always coming up to me, and it happened yesterday at my show. They were like, kids will be like, how do I become a comedian? I'm like, do a stand-up competition your junior year in college and wait for somebody to call you, duh.
And then have the person that works at Clay Cross call you to see if you want to go tour with them. It's all good.
Yeah, that's all you have to do. Like that's how I got into it.
Wow.
And I worked hard at the beginning
Yeah.
of. I was on that Clay Cross tour, and then the Newsboys saw me, so they asked me to open for them. That
That's
turned out to
awesome.
be the #1 tour in Christian music that year. It was called Take Me to Your Leader
Yeah, I
tour.
remember that.
So all of a sudden, I'm standing in front of 4,000 or 5,000 people a night, pretending to be a comedian because I was not a comedian. I grew up with funny people around me, and people were always telling me I should do comedy. But at first, I didn't know you could do stand-up in churches or anything.
Yeah.
I thought it was all bars and clubs and stuff, and I
Right.
didn't really want that lifestyle. But when I realized, like, oh, this might be what God has in store for me, so
That's
I just
awesome.
started doing it.
So share real quickly about just maybe a testimony about someone that you've been able to encourage. Obviously, you mentioned that about humor. That's a huge part of what people, instead of taking drugs, they can just get take some humor. Share a testimony about that.
I guess I'm a pusher.
Yeah, you're a
I
God
didn't even
humor
think about that, yeah.
pusher.
Man, because I've been doing this for like 21 years. Like my hotel shampoo collection is massive. It's just so insane. But yeah, some stories that God has just used comedy. I'll tell you one. Right when because I got in before the internet and stuff, and then when the internet started becoming popular and all this stuff. I remember I would always answer emails, like any kind of fan mail. I would always just answer that. And I remember one night I got an email, and it was long, and so I was reading it, and this girl was going to commit suicide.
Wow.
And she had told me how she had planned it out. They had removed a guardrail from this bridge while they were doing construction, and so she realized she was going to take these pills and then drive off this bridge.
Wow.
And she emailed me because she had gone to a show like a week before, and she was like, I haven't laughed in like 3 years, and so the only reason why I'm reaching out to you is just to say thank you at the end here. Like, you just brought joy, and I haven't had joy in a long time. So I immediately emailed her back, and I emailed her a bunch of scriptures and talked about how, God loves her, and like sometimes, like it's a dark place, but God can shine the brightest light in the darkest place if you'll just give him a chance, and all the stuff. Sent it off, never heard back from her until about a year later. I was at Kingdom Bound. It's a theme park in Cincinnati. And it was like it was like a festival, and I was there early, and I was at the very back of the Timberwolf Theater, a big open theater, and I was just standing, and a band was like sound checking and stuff, and I'm just watching, and all of a sudden this girl just comes rushing over and just like bear hugs me, and she's just like weeping, and she leans back, and I don't know why, but I just knew.
Wow.
I knew exactly who it was.
Wow.
So here's the story. So she was getting ready. She'd taken the pills, was getting ready. She went to turn off her light before she went to get in her car.
Yeah.
And she just turned and looked at her room one more time just to have one more deal. And as soon as she turned, my email came in.
Wow.
And I was like, why didn't you reply? Why didn't you let me know that you were okay? And she was like, I was embarrassed.
Yeah.
But I sat there and I read the scriptures that you sent. And then I read what you said about Jesus loving me. And I thought, if Jesus does love me, to have this email come in at the right time.
Wow.
And so, like, that was a success story. Another one that pops in mind, and it's going to sound bad because now it feels like teenage girls that go to my show want to commit suicide. But I was doing a festival in Indiana. It was a small town festival. It was outdoors. It was boiling hot. It was not a big, like you think, festival. It was basically in the town center, and we were kind of just putting on entertainment throughout the day. So people were just walking around, and I'm up there trying to do my show with inflatable sumo wrestling suit guys like wrestling beside me, and frisbee. And there's nobody here, but there's people out throwing frisbee. Every once in a while, you see them throw a frisbee and go,
Right.
it's just terrible. And I showed up and I kind of had a bad attitude, but I was like, you know what? If this is what God wants me to do, I'm going to do it.
Right.
So I got up and I did my show, and I always share testimony and stuff. And afterwards, I went to my merch table, and the mosquitoes were terrible. They were just horrible, like huge, big mosquitoes. And there was this girl that was just standing off to the side, and it was starting to get dark. And I was signing stuff, and I just learned how to write in cursive. It was a very good day for me. And I was like, meeting people and stuff, but I kept like watching her, and she just looked beaten, just broken. And when I finished, I started to break up my merch table, and she just took one step forward, and she said in the quietest voice I've ever heard, she just goes, "How do I know he loves me?" And I was like, "What?"
Wow.
And she goes, "How do I know you said he loves me. How do you know?"
Wow.
And I was like, so I started talking to her, and then I went and got the promoters that were putting on the event. I went and got the guy's wife and brought her over. And this girl just had the worst childhood, unbelievably bad childhood. Kind of the same thing, though, had decided. She actually got thrown out of a truck by her, I guess, okay to say this, but her cousins. This was years ago.
Yeah.
Her cousins just kind of dumped her out of the truck. And so she was planning to that was going to be it. But she was walking through the little town center and heard me and just sat and listened.
Wow.
And when I tell these stories, it's not me at all. Like, I'm just this goofy guy that just, hey, waka, waka,
does
waka.
whatever God wants you to do.
Yeah. But she listened, and she had never been given any hope in her life. Like, never been told anything encouraging. And so, to the credit of this family, the promoter that had brought me in and stuff, and specifically his wife, just took her in, let her stay, and before I flew out the next day, I brought her 12 envelopes and stamps, and I was like, I want you once a month to write me.
That's awesome.
And so she did. She wrote me for like 2 years
That's
of
so
how,
great.
like, and her life turned around simply because I said something that made her laugh.
Yep.
And then God was like, okay, we have your attention. Now here's how we're going to,
Is really how God's used you probably in a lot of people's lives through the years that way.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's awesome.
And then there's, like, I say silly kind of success stories, but they're really not. But there's people that come that are just broken,
Yeah.
and they just need to laugh. They need to just turn their brain off for
Yeah.
an hour, hour and a half,
Yeah.
and just laugh. And
That's so great.
So yeah, comedy, I love doing it. It's just amazing. When it's going well. When
Yeah.
When I'm doing the junior high lock-in at 4 a.m. after the shaving crew
And they're like,
fight,
we've already heard that joke, Bob.
Yeah.
That's funny. Well, Bob, thank you for being on Man 360.
My pleasure.
Appreciate your time,
Yeah.
and we appreciate your ministry as well. And I know my wife and I love your stuff, and just continue to
thanks.
pray for you to be, as long as God has you to do it, that you'll be doing it.
Yeah, probably another month.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is maybe the last. You never know.
This is probably it.
This is it.
Yeah.
Thanks, Bob.